DACA is a very, very difficult subject for me, I will tell you. To me, it's one of the most difficult subjects I have, because you have these incredible kids, in many cases, not in all cases. They were brought here in such a way. It's a very, very tough subject. We are going to deal with DACA with heart.
Good morning and welcome back to AM Joy. Immigration officials have arrested nearly 700 people in multi-city raids and operations across the country, prompting protests all week, including a national Day Without Immigrants strike on Thursday that put a spotlight on the role that immigrants play in the U.S. economy. The protests continue today. A few hours from now in Los Angeles, tens of thousands of people are expected to gather to call for an immediate halt to the ICE raids and to Donald Trump's travel ban. The president suggested on Thursday that he is working on a compassionate way to deal with immigrants covered by DACA. That's the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals policy that allows some undocumented immigrants who arrived in the U.S. as minors to attend school and to work without fear of deportation. But already one man protected under DACA is facing deportation. Immigration and Customs Enforcement arrested 23-year-old Daniel Ramirez Medina last week. Justice Department officials say Medina has gang ties and is therefore eligible for deportation, a claim his attorney says is false. As Medina's attorney fights for his release, the fate of some 750,000 other dreamers remains frighteningly unclear. Also on Friday, the Associated Press reported that it obtained an 11-page draft memo that outlined what appeared to be a Trump administration proposal to mobilize as many as 100,000 National Guard troops to round up unauthorized immigrants. Now, the White House has vigorously denied the report, and the Department of Homeland Security has said the memo was a very early draft for an idea that was never seriously considered. And joining me now is activist and actress Rosie Perez, Maria Hinojosa, anchor and executive producer of Latino USA, and former Republican Congressman of Arizona, J.D. Hayworth. Thank you all for being here. Former Congressman Hayworth, I want to go to you first, because Donald Trump ran on the idea of deporting essentially all undocumented migrants from the United States. And now you have raids taking place across the United States that are really terrifying people. How can the Republican Party justify going after, at least at this point, one DACA recipient as part of those raids?
Well, good morning to you, Joy, and to Maria and Rosie as well. And just a friendly amendment to the introduction. Obviously, I am a recovering member of Congress, now gainfully employed by Newsmax TV, where I'm a host. And I know, Joy, in the television business, we want to make sure we put our affiliations out there.
Sure.
You've put a lot in that one question, so let's unpack it just a little bit, if we could, please. Number one, I think what we have to come to grips with is the notion, are we going to enforce laws? And with reference to the situation in Seattle, let's let the judge review the facts of the case. You laid that out. I think it's important to understand this is just as elemental as we all live in apartments or in homes. We have locks on the door. If anyone came in unauthorized, that would be considered breaking and entering without your permission. And just as we all search for personal security, we have to understand that immigration and the question of who comes to our country lawfully, remember, immigration is a term of law. When you abandon it, you're not talking about immigrants. You're talking, sadly, about something else entirely. So I think it's important that the laws are enforced. As I recall, Mr. Trump did not run specifically on deportation, but he did run on law enforcement. And I can tell you, Joy, in my own situation, what I have seen in Arizona is when local jurisdictions were enforcing immigration law, people were obeying immigration law. So it's important to remember, when the laws are enforced, people follow the law.
Well, he actually did run on having he ran on having a massive deportation force, which a lot of people believe is happening right now.
There's all right. Well, first, again, let's correct this. The deportation force, if you want to call it that, exists. Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. The United States Border Patrol, again, it's within the framework of existing law. And, you know, I think there's a way to end all the hysterics and all the name calling on this. Let's follow existing law. And let's perhaps find a way legislatively to deal with people who were brought here as youngsters through no fault of their own. And if people step up, if the Hollywood left would step up with its own personal resources and personally sponsor those who have come here, if that can be made a provision of law, but if we return to the notion of sponsorship and responsibility and knowing who is coming here, I don't believe that's unreasonable.
Okay, you also know,
Border
sir, as a
security
TV
is
host, that
national
there's limited
security.
TV times. I want to let everybody in on this conversation.
Sure,
You
but
mentioned
you
the
were asking,
Hollywood
and so I was
left,
happy
Rosie
to change
Perez,
that.
so I'm going to go right to the member of the Hollywood left that's on our panel right now. Your response to what you just heard.
Well, first of all, I'm not a lefty. I'm not a liberal. I'm a Democrat conservative. So I take offense to that, sir, with all due respect. You can't lump us all into one.
It's good to hear from you,
thing.
Rosie.
Yes, good to hear from you, too, but I still don't agree with you. And
That's
Trump
fine.
did run on deporting immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and what have you. But to say that it's up to the Hollywood elite to fix this problem is insane. That's why we have a government. We have government and we have lawmakers to address this problem. That is your job. That is your job. My
Well, first
job
of all,
as an
it
American.
was my
Hold on,
job.
JD.
Hold on,
One
sir.
person's talking. You
Hold
do
on,
TV.
sir,
You know how it
'cause
goes.
I respected you
Sure.
and was quiet, so please offer me the same respect. Now, our job, not as Hollywood elites, but as an American citizen, is to speak up and to speak and have our voices heard. And you cannot quiet us because of that is our constitutional right. So people telling us, Hollywood actors, to sit down and be quiet, if you're applying that to us, then apply it to yourself as well.
Yeah.
So
I think
that nonsense
that's
really has
precisely
to...
my point.
No, it wasn't your point. Your point was that we should take on the responsibility of our elected officials. So therefore, that's what you were saying. Well, we're not going to go
No, that's not what I was saying.
Yes, it was. We're not going to go and reach out to every undocumented person and help them out. We are doing that, by the way. I am personally doing that, by the way. But it's not my job.
Are you sponsoring immigrants who come
Hold on a
here?
second. Hold on, JD.
sponsoring.
We're not going to divert
Just
into a
asking a
conversation
question.
about whether everyone in Hollywood should go and find an undocumented migrant and personally sponsor them. That isn't even a
Ridiculous.
solution to the 11 million undocumented in the country. But I want to come to Mariana also, because we do have people who are responsible for fixing these problems. They're called members of Congress. Several of them participated in a meeting with Immigration and Customs Enforcement and came out of that meeting believing, in their view, that all 11 million undocumented people in the country are now at risk of deportation. But there were some Hispanic Democrats who were not even allowed in the room. Several Hispanic Democrats were denied entry into the meeting with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Congressman Luis Gutierrez of Illinois was one of them. He tweeted about the fact that Speaker Ryan Stapp actually kept members of Congress out of the meeting. Do you have any reporting on why that was? How could it be that members of Congress were not allowed in?
No, I actually don't have reporting on that. But what I can tell you in response to what former Congressman JD said, to say that there's a hysterical and that we all need to calm down, with all due respect, you can say that because of your position of privilege. Excuse me, as a white man.
Oh.
So, yes, I'm sorry to say that to you, because
so
what
this is
JD,
interesting.
wait, one
Let's
person's
understand what
talking,
you're
one
saying.
person's
No, I'm
talking.
being
No,
attacked.
excuse
I'm
me.
being
You
attacked
can
directly.
respond in a minute. Hold
Instead
on a
of
second.
diversity,
JD,
you're interested in
what
divisiveness.
happened? No,
That's very
JD,
instructive,
you need
Maria.
to listen, because you will not be stopped and questioned at any point as to whether or not you have papers or legitimacy to be in this country. And what has happened from the members of Congress who tweeted that out, for example, Joaquin Castro, who said, I believe now that every single undocumented immigrant is at risk. So, of course, myself being an immigrant who was not born in this country, and as I'm looking at that and then getting on the subway, and I'm like, so exactly what is going to happen here? Are all of us who are not white going to be asked to show our papers? That is what this president has done. He has created a situation where you can sit back and say that we're being hysterical, but I ask you, when have you spoken to an undocumented immigrant in the last 3 days, 4 days, to ask them what it feels like to be terrorized in their own country? You have not done that, have you? Have you?
I will tell you what's happened
How
to me.
many friends
and since
are
you've asked
yours
me,
are undocumented
well, no,
immigrants?
first of all, you're setting up a false premise. And if
No,
you
it's
want
not
an
actually
answer
a
to
false
question,
premise.
Maria,
Hold on, hold on,
first
hold on, hold on.
you've already played the politics of division. Look, I knew it was going to be 3 against 1 when I agreed to come in.
But we're
You
not
hold
going to
on and let
filibuster.
me
We're
answer.
not going to filibuster.
No, we're
we
not.
need to
I'm
have
gonna answer
one
the
person's
question
going to
if you
talk
let
at a
me.
time. One person's going to talk
That's
at a
right.
time. Okay?
And are you
It
gonna let me
can't
talk?
be only you. That's the problem. So
Are you-
here's the question.
we've listened to two other people.
Here's the question.
Uh-huh.
The likelihood that you would be stopped and asked to show that you are documented as an American citizen is very low. The likelihood that Maria would be stopped,
Or that Joy,
Rosie would be
or that
stopped, or that
Rosie.
I would be stopped is much higher. So I think that is a valid question to ask: is have you?
All right, and
You
can
are
I
not at
answer
that
it?
kind of risk.
Can I answer it?
Sure.
Because I've actually gone through questioning by the Border Patrol. When I was moving from Cincinnati, and Maria understands this in television, it's somewhat of a nomadic experience. When I was moving from Cincinnati to Arizona and driving along our southeast border, I have been stopped by the Border Patrol. I have been asked if I was a citizen. My car has been examined, and the same thing has happened. Anyone in Southern California, Rosie, perhaps if you go down south to San Diego, everybody has had a situation where there have been traffic stops for border security.
Have you ever been held by
that
immigration?
is nothing unique.
Have you ever
Have I ever been held by immigration?
Have you ever been held?
It's fascinating.
Have you ever been asked to present something beyond your driver's license? Have you been asked to present
You
your
bet
passport?
I have, not
have you
by
been asked to present
immigration,
your
not
birth
by immigration,
certificate?
but by federal law enforcement. Not by immigration, but by federal law enforcement. I've been asked for my date of birth. I've been asked for my social security card.
It's not the same thing.
That's not the same
Of course
thing.
it is.
Let me
It's
ask
law
you-
enforcement. Now, see, this
Let
is
me ask you
fascinating
something,
because
sir,
you want to get
you're
away from
monopolizing
being
a
a
lot of
nation of
time.
laws.
And let me just ask you something,
this
sir.
This is very
when
instructive.
You were pulled
this is
over,
very instructive.
JD,
were
you have
stopped.
to let other people talk.
Yeah,
you
you're being
can't
a
be the
little
only
rude.
one speaking.
When you were pulled over and
I
you were
think you are
stopped
being
and you
rude.
were questioned, did fear strike your soul? Did fear strike
What
your
happened
soul?
to me was-
Did fear strike your soul? Did fear strike
It
your
was
soul
somewhat
and say,
disconcerting,
am I going
but
to
I
be
took out
arrested? Am I going to
took
take
out
in?
my
Am I going to be
IDs,
questioned?
and
Were
I-
you afraid? Were you terrified?
It was somewhat disconcerting. I will grant you
Disconcerting
that.
is not
but I also
terrified.
understand the greater good. I also understand the greater good of national security
Okay.
because it is not a question of ethnicity.
Okay.
It's a question of security.
It
and the
actually
rule of
is a
law.
question of
I know
ethnicity.
facts
It
are
actually is.
stubborn
So
things,
here's-
and I know you want to spin this false narrative this morning rather than look for solutions.
so you
and
get
that's
to
fine. We
determine
can
what
play
is
that
false?
game just
You're
like
right, and
Luis
JD,
Gutierrez
we're not
did in
gonna allow
Congress,
you- right,
claiming
okay.
he was
So-
shut out of the member.
Wow.
No, I understand what you guys are pulling, and it's very
What?
instructive,
We're not
and I
pulling
appreciate
anything.
the chance to come be with you. I'm accused of privilege, and I'm accused of all these things.
Oh my
and it's
God.
very
Okay, so
instructive.
let me ask you a very specific question. There was an arrest of an immigrant who went in to seek domestic violence protection. This was somebody in El Paso County in Texas. And their stop in it was a hearing that went from ordinary to unprecedented last week when half a dozen Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents showed up at a courthouse where an undocumented woman was seeking a protective order against the boyfriend she accused of abusing her, and she left under arrest. Do you have any discomfort, JD, with the idea that somebody showed up to try to get protection for domestic violence and was instead swarmed on, essentially, by 6 ICE agents and arrested?
I have a greater degree of discomfort with the Latino-on-Latina violence in the Washington, D.C. area where a 15-year-old was savagely attacked by members of MS-13. I have a greater concern about
JD,
law-breaking and violence than I do about a situation where people have disobeyed immigration
You
law.
talked earlier about false narratives. You just answered my question about a specific arrest with an attempt to talk about Latino-on-Latino violence. So essentially, you're trying to ascribe violence to an entire race of people, an ethnic group,
No, I'm
as
not.
the answer
I'm
to my
simply
question.
using a descriptive
That
term.
is not
I'm
the
simply
answer to my
offering-
question.
I know,
That's a non
because you want me to
sequitur.
sit
It was
here
a non
flummoxed.
sequitur.
The MSNBC script is to have a conservative on and treat them as the evil one, tell them to be quiet.
We
not
don't tell
to
you what to
assert
say, sir. If you
solutions,
come across poorly, it's
to try-
because
no,
of
no,
what you
but
said,
what you
not
do is
because
you
of the
offer
questions
pointed
that you're
questions. For
being
example,
asked.
I thought it was very illustrative. You asked Maria about Congress rather than asking the congressman. I can tell you exactly
That's
what went
because
on
you
at
took
that
too long
meeting.
to answer the first question, sweetie. You were
okay.
you were too long.
All right,
Look,
well,
you've been
fine.
talking
It's
the whole
very
time.
You've been
about it.
talking
You've
the
been
whole
talking
time. All right, let's give you a chance to answer the specific question about Congress. Why specifically would Latino members of Congress be denied access to a meeting about immigration and customs enforcement, particularly when these were members who were specifically concerned about this and were the ones who raised those concerns? Why would they be kept out of the meeting?
Well, here is what I would offer as conjecture. I was not there, but I have been in plenty of security briefings where there is a list where you work to put yourself on a schedule. And my friend Luis apparently was not put on the list to come in for the briefing, as were others, and so the decision was made to claim it was...
They are the ones who were asking the questions. So you're saying that you don't find it odd that only Latino Democrats were kept out of that meeting. You don't think that that's strange?
I don't believe that narrative is exactly the case. I think there's probably
it is
more
according to Luis
but
Gutierrez.
I understand. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll take it out of the ethnicity. Although that's tough when you take a look at the stunt that Elizabeth Warren pulled, and we know that
what
she
does Elizabeth Warren
falsely
have
claimed
to do
to
with
be
anything?
American Indian. Well, because
wait a minute.
it's
Okay,
another
JD,
stunt
can I
in
just
the
tell you
Senate
something? We're going to end here.
to set up
But
a greed class. I figured
you've
you would.
talked about
You don't
straw
wanna hear
men,
it.
but twice now you've answered questions with non sequiturs that have some sort of an ethnic base to them. Now you've gone after Elizabeth Warren's Native American heritage, which is a complete non sequitur.
She has not.
I think we're done with this
She has
segment
not.
because you literally
I know
answered a
facts are
non sequitur.
stubborn
It's
things.
incredibly offensive.
Thank
I'm going to
you.
let Rosie Perez
I
talk about the
understand,
organ.
yes.
Thank you
I'm
for
a
being
white
here.
man with
No,
privilege.
you know what?
God bless you all. Thank you so
what
much.
an odd exchange. Odd non sequiturs. I want to
No,
talk to you
it's
for a second,
absolutely
Rosie Perez.
prudent.
Thank you. Wow. Anyway, I'm going to give you a chance to respond, and then I know that you have an organization that we want to also talk about as well.
What I want to respond to is this, is that although it's trite and people call it rhetoric, but it's true. We are a nation of immigrants. We are a nation that has been built on the back of immigrants. And where is the heart of America? This is what's really scary with this new administration. The heart of America is disappearing. And here's the simple fact that this elected official, former elected official that was on, he kept talking and talking and talking and pivoting, and we're not addressing the issues, right? What's going on with hopefully it won't go through with National Guards coming in and gathering up all undocumented.
DHS has said they're not going to do that.
People is insane. And also what really bothers me is that still to this day, people compare the immigrant situation, the undocumented situation here in America solely as a Latino issue.
Exactly.
It is not. It is not. There are people here illegally from the UK, from Africa, from Asia, from India, from Haiti, from Canada. They're all over, but yet we get stigmatized, and it's very, very insulting, and it really needs to stop.
Yeah.
It really does. I just really want to concentrate on the kids, on the DACA kids, for them to have a moment in history of relief, of not being afraid, because legislation was passed to protect them, and then that be in jeopardy now. I work in a charity that I co-founded, Urban Arts Partnership, we're going to talk about later. Students are afraid. They're terrified. They are terrified. Students that once were in the closet and came out of the closet, and we were trying to help them to find a way to come be here legally, they ran back inside.
Yeah.
They ran back inside, and that creates a problem. It creates a humongous problem. First of all, they can't sit down in a classroom and learn properly.
And you know why?
Because of the stress and strife. And their families at home are terrified as well, and they're not allowing them to go to school anymore.
Yes.
This is a big problem, and people, you better wake up, because it's going to volcano, and once it does, there's going to be a reckoning.
So what happens is that these kids, what they're saying is, it's nice for us, but what about our parents?
Right.
We can't go to school if we're worried about our parents. It's a much larger issue. There's got to be a heart that involves the entire family.
Yeah, absolutely. Very quickly, we are out of time. Rosie, very quickly, tell us about the Urban Arts Partnership.
Urban Arts Partnership is an arts integrated program that services Title I schools, 150 schools in New York City and Los Angeles. We service over 15,000 kids a year. It is our 25th anniversary. It's going to be at Cipriani at Wall Street, March 15th. Please come down and really, really give to education, give back to our kids.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And this was a very interesting segment. Thank you, guys. guys for sitting through it. I really appreciate it. Rosie
Thank
Perez,
you.
Maria Hinojosa. Thank you guys both. All right. And Maria is going to come back later in the show. And coming up, are Russian leaders freaking out that Michael Flynn won't be in Donald Trump's ear anymore? That's next.